Okay, so we started with a 3D sketch, and to get into some of the more complex shapes, I want to go back to the 3D sketch and see if we can extract some of that geometry. And mainly the use of the 3D sketch comes in that rather than creating plane and a 2D sketch and multiple 2D sketches and multiple planes, I'm going to try and get as much geometry into the 3D sketch as I can. So I want curves in pretty much all directions, and that's going to determine whether I'm going to try and sweep or with guide curves or loft, or go back and try and do the boundary surface as an example. So from the front plane, I'm just going to start kind of get something established, and we'll go about 5 inches looks good, and about 1 inch high. Okay, 2 inches high. All right, so that gives me some vectors to work from. Hitting the tab button is going to switch the that floating origin. So I want my curvature to come out a little bit this way and not so much this way. All right, so we're going to start off kind of flat, a little bit of curvature on this side, and bring that geometry back. And actually, I want it to lean backwards, so this one needs to be heavier and that one lighter. Oops, and no, I didn't want that. So let's go about 2 inches there and 1 inch there. All right, so the advantage of doing this way is that I can kind of see where those points are falling in. And then if I need to accumulate another angle somewhere, I might be able to build it in without too much headache. So my 3-point arc is going to establish the first curvature. And let's see, dimension. Yeah, 1.5 looks okay. And then if let's see, if we want to come out a little bit this way, I don't know that kicking that angle is going to help me any, so I'm going to keep it simple at first. So missed my tab, so that is definitely not the direction I want to go. That looks better, and we'll drag that to position. All right, so pretty heavy-duty scoop, but put a dimension on it. All right, so this is all kind of hypothetical, and notice that let's see, from the top, if I was looking for that twist, because this isn't attached to a plane, it has the ability to rotate about the 2 connection points back to my 3D sketch. Oh, and crash and burn. Starting the recording again. All right, so we're back to that kind of where we were. And we'll try the twist without the crash this time. I want to pull that back just a little bit. All right, so in its direction, to get to that center point, I have a couple of options if I want to drive. We can create a center line and bring it out normal 2. All right, and then back to the midpoint. And then that becomes an along Z, and that pulled it not quite the way that I wanted it to. So I was kind of expecting that to stay underdefined and allow me to twist, but I guess because of the twist, well, that doesn't have a dimension on it. Okay, so how about instead of midpoint, I just go with coincidence so that can float, and then we can set a dimension. I want it to be a little under, so how about 4.75. All right, so what that did is it came slightly below midpoint, which doesn't bother me. All right, so I was trying to force it easy selection going to midpoint, but to have that kind of fall back, it kind of makes sense that that's going to have to move up and down as this dimension changes. All right, so my next, let's go with the top plane first. And so those were the arcs. If I want something a little wavier, then I go to the spline. And still not quite used to the spline tool without the handles. So let's go to the style spline so that I can control those points. Did it connect? No, it didn't connect. There we go. All right, so the style spline is going to let me drag those construction lines and get that little bit of wave. Again, dimension back to those points where before we had the handles and could stretch and shrink. Now, not so much. Just a little bit different. Same thing, just a little bit different. All right, so all through 266, we said don't use the plane on the sketch toolbar. Inserts a plane into a 3D sketch. Well, here we want to use it. So my references are going to be the top plane. Location at the second reference we'll put at the top of the sketch, and that's going to give me kind of the same thing. I want it to, well, I don't want to end up with that same thing, having points going up and down along that wave if I don't need them. All right, so for this one, I'm not ready to generate that geometry. So we'll give this the same number of points. All right, so we can pull and push, and we'll put a little bit more into that one. See what it looks like. All right, so I've created a fairly complex construction, one 3D sketch, and since I'm not feeling that brave, we're going to go ahead and save it. I think I put that in the student folders. All right, so setting this up as, well, if I go with sweep, I'm only going to be able to go from here through this curve and maybe to the guide curve, but it's going to ignore this. Already determined that, well, let's try it. Okay, so clear selections, we're going to go into the selection manager, and the selection manager says we can pick an open contour, and I swear that I used to be able to pick those, so if it's not going to let me have them, well, then the other side of that is back into the 3D sketch, because I really don't want to, nope, I didn't want to edit that one, I wanted a new one. I want to convert those entities in. Okay, well, as long as I'm converting them, it's going to allow me to. Did I go back in and edit that one again? Yeah. All right. Well, let's see if it'll go in two directions. So I grabbed the whole thing, which was what I was trying to avoid. So that one comes out. Well, take that back. Let's try one more time before I give up. Back into the selection manager. Nope, still trying to grab the whole thing because they're connected. Okay, so remove that one. Sketch, back into the 3D sketch, do another convert, close that one. Let's see what it picks randomly between the two. And went right to guide curve. Wow. All right, sketch 2 for really. All right, we're gonna hide you. Do I actually have 3D2 sketches? All right, so it's not gonna let me pick that one. I want that one, yes. Okay, I just gave you the profile. Oh, getting ahead of myself again. Except, no, you're not going to take that. That's an open contour on the face. And I did what I said I was going to do last time. We need to go over to surfaces instead of trying to create features. It only took me way too long to figure that out. All right, so 3D sketch 2 becomes the path, that becomes the profile, and I haven't set anything up for guide curves. So pretty much this transition is going to be smooth through all of those parts. All right, so not exactly the clearest, but let's go ahead and show again. Back into the 3D sketch. Convert the entities one more time. All right, so now we'll go ahead and generate it, see what we get for the sweep and the loft. We'll need them all eventually anyway. And convert, and then we can hide the first. All right, so that is the geometry that we're shooting for. All right, so this transition here, I expect that to be the most difficult. All right, so back into the surfaces. We're going to do the swept surface. So this piece going through this geometry with guide curve in generally the same direction. This really isn't going to be a guide curve so much. And because my preview disappeared, pretty well assured it's going to fail. Okay, so guide curve 1 is invalid. Doesn't like it. Well, I shouldn't have kicked it out. Do want to see the result at some point, so there's the surface in relation, and so it's not really following that geometry around or something that it can match. It's approximating it, so to speak. All right, so not the desired result. If we go to the lofted surface, then we're transitioning from this contour to this contour. It gives us the nice handle that, well, it'll make the transition, but it's straight line, and it's connected to the point. Why isn't the mesh showing? Let's turn on the mesh preview. Kind of helps. What ends up happening is we drag that handle along. It's trying to connect just to the endpoints. If we could drag that handle along the curves, then it goes to twist, and once you have a self-intersecting shape, it's going to fail. It's not going to show you the preview. All right, so we go to the guide curve. It gets a little wavier. Guide curve number 2. And that gives me a little more control over the surface and the curvature of the geometry. All right, so if I go back to the first 3D sketch, you can see that it's pretty well figured out how to make those transitions and go through all of that geometry. All right, so the one that we're still not sure about, let's see, Control Z, is going to be in the boundary surface. So I'm assuming that direction 1 is going to stay with direction 1. We have a very similar to the loft, handles going from point A to point B. Our transition, direction vector, normal to profile, and then direction 2, I'm going to pick up those faces. And direction vector, normal to profile. Well, let's put a couple of these normal to profile. Nope, doesn't like that. And looking for the tangency. All right, so tangent influence percentage. It'd be nice to have a, let's see which one of those makes that go away. All right, so we were getting the tangent on the direction vector, and which one was selected? Oh, haven't selected a direction. So let's go ahead and show again. Get it around here somewhere where we can start to see some variation. That's not really growing or shrinking, is it? All right, so I guess, but not so much. We don't have intermediate, so the next curve, next sharp, next edge, that really isn't going to help us either. Global is probably going to be fine until we get into some other detail. But pretty much the same thing as the loft. Not not anything spectacular at this point, but it gives us those additional. If I go in and read the instructions on how to actually use the direction vector normal to profile, would have that that higher level of control. All right. So the biggest problem with the surfaces is visualizing the construction. What is going to give you the resulting geometry? And it ends up with the 3D sketches, transitions, curves, combinations of sweeps, lofts. You're not limited to one tool. You're going to have to combine up to get a decent result. All right, so we'll save the more than one loft section boundary to the solids. Okay. All right. So the question really is when would we go to the surface over the feature? And in most cases, if I can generate it with a feature, I'm gonna bypass the surface completely. I don't have to do the thicken. I guess that was the one I probably should have done real quick. Since we got the surface, let's go ahead and hide. All right, so we got all of that geometry in place. Everything's hidden. And we want to actually do something with this, make it a solid. So we have a couple of options here. And to just have the geometry, we can thicken it. Again, thicken is going to give it, give it a thickness. And we pick the surface. It shows us the directions and how much, and that will create our shape. There's no intersections, there's no dimples, so that looks pretty good. Occasionally going inside to outside, midline will create some of those dimples and cause the thicken to fail. All right, the other possibility is I only may need one region of this for my solid. So whatever I'm generating, we can go back into the front plane, pick up the spline, put a few, maybe not that much. Put a few points in place so that we have our potato chip shape. And the feature is actually created by extruding the boss base and telling it to go up to surface, then picking that surface. And so we have the boundary surface, not showing a preview. All right, once it's created, then we go back and hide the boundary surface. It's another one of those construction things that I can't eliminate it. It is creating that additional geometry. So if we have the parents, let's see, the arrows. If I do the dynamic reference, I think I went the wrong way. All right, so the dynamic reference is pointing to that boundary surface, and the boundary surface will point to the sketches will point back to the 3D sketch. And so it's one of those, you've created that construction geometry, you've built in that scaffolding, that skeleton or whatever. I can't just eliminate it, so I'm gonna hide it. Suppressing it does kind of the same thing. It's a parent feature at that point. Suppressing it will suppress the solid that I've generated. All right, so now then this is our functional piece, whatever it is, and we can go in and start to build around the solid, or this would be, let's go ahead and shell it just for fun. And see what it gives for, well, actually, before I shell it, let's put a little bit of a fillet on. That will help it with the transition. And unless I want to do a lot of EDM electrode making, having that very sharp, not a good idea. All right, so we'll see what it looks like with 100 thousandths wall. All right, so the inside, the outside. My next mouse project, operate it this way. Okay, so in selecting that hybrid method, I have something complex. I need to build it up. I need to take it where the features start to fail. Typically, you're going to reach that point of frustration of, why can't I get this feature to work? And then the light bulb will go off and go, well, I should probably try a surface. And the surface will take you to that level of, I have the geometry I need, and then what is going to be my transition back to a solid? Am I going to do that thicken? Am I going to perform the extrude up to face? And then use that as the defining geometry. So in the case of the sweeps and lofts, the best examples are still the ones that have gone on forever as kind of the bottle, and it also illustrates pretty well how to use the guide curves. So what I try to do is create the path first. It's always worked well for me to create the path first. I don't know that that's a you have to, but it definitely simplifies some things. All right, so my path in this case is going to be a straight line, and we'll stay with going to be a tall bottle, 20 inches. All right, so if I want to just generate the sweep, this could be a spline and have the wave through it and do whatever it does, and whatever I generate as the profile will just follow that wave, right? But we're going to drive this with guide curves, so the direction is generally up, generally in a straight line, and the guide curves are going to control the bulges, the indentations, the which way this goes. So multi-step process, sketch one, and then we're going to go back to the top plane as a first. We'll generate the an ellipse and start to get it defined. When we're piercing, pierce is still going to be preferable. Again, I don't know that it's necessary, but pierce has less failures than trying to make things coincident. So we're 5, and we'll make it kind of narrow. Go to 2. So for the SolidWorks example that they use, they actually do a curve through points, and I should try and find that file. They generate an XYZ table, and under the curves, curve through XYZ points, and insert will bring in that data set and generate the curve that kind of flows along that edge. I can also, if I have a table, I can go through and enter those. Not fun, but will work, and then we can save those tables out back to the to text files or to some other file type. All right, so if I just go to sweep this, and we're going to stay in the features, swept boss base, it's going to give me a cylinder and nothing really exciting. The handle is pretty much along the path. There's not a lot really going on there. Where this gets interesting is we'll go into the front plane, and I'm going to pick up that style spline again and try to get used to using it since the other one apparently isn't coming back. And put in those positions, maybe one more. Okay, so a little bit this way, a little bit that way. Go ahead and make that horizontal. Really got to give that a pull if I want it to go. All right, and then kind of the same thing, fully defined sketch, calculate. That looks okay. If I need to make adjustments, at least I have the dimensions to work from. All right, and then we're going to pick up the right plane. All right, and then horizontal. Oh, I went right back to the standard. So pretty much to a curve. Let's see. Yeah, we'll stay with that. All right. So now when I go into my swept, we're going to pick the path, pick up the profile. All right, shows me the same preview. We go into the guide curves, and I'm not seeing the preview, so that doesn't bode well. All right, intermediate profile could not be solved. So the other portion of that then, let's see, you have to dust off some brain cells there, and for whatever reason, I want to say that the guide curves, when we inserted the curve, the guide curves went in first, and then the other geometry was related back to them. And I'm not sure why that is. So let's see if we can reorder. So it's still tied to sketch 1 somehow. Oh yeah, I left the horizontal in there. So we'll play around with this a little bit, see if that's the case. All right, so sketch 1, sketch 2, we'll leave it somewhat underdefined. Not necessarily that they have to be connected, but we'll find out here in a second. Nope, still no preview. Of the original section sketch. If it would just make it wavy, that would be okay. Okay, make sure, double check. Yeah, let's just add it to the ordinate. Nope. Did it define that one? Oh, that was the other definition. All right. So why didn't it go defined? Oh, height-wise. All right, so just out of curiosity, that one goes there. All right, so profile, path, sweep. One direction. So let's see if the one direction works. And so pretty much straight up and down. All right, front to back. And bulging, shrinking from left to right. Okay, so that being the case, let's undo. We'll look at the sketch. Add a few more relations. Yep, got a path on that one. All right, closing in on it. Okay, so defined, and mainly because I want to come back and make adjustments and see what the results are. All right, so back to sketch 2. Take that dimension out, relate it back. So coincident, we're going to try coincident as opposed to Pierce. All right, so we got our profile. I could generate, well, I'd have to roll back and generate 2 more curves out there. But let's go ahead with profile, path, swept. Pick up our guide curve. So a little bit of shift and a little bit of shift. All right, so I don't think it's stated anywhere that the guide curves have to go in first, but apparently guide curves should be one of the first things that you start to generate. All right, figure out what the outside shape is going to be, tie your base geometry to that, and then the path is being that straight line is pretty much just kind of secondary there. So that would be the interesting one to try out is if we make that a construction line, and I go back to the spline geometry. So now we have a curve driven by curves. Is that something that actually is going to be doable? All right, so it's still picking, and if we were to remove those, right, oh, yeah, we have some in conditions that it tried to stay normal too, or it just came back to that point. All right, so under the options, see normal and constant maybe. All right, so okay that way, okay that way. Now we have this effect that says the path is pushing it this way while the guide curves are pulling it that way, which it looks interesting, but it comes back to what's the functionality. Yeah, I need one of those. What's that? It's art. All of my my sweep, almost all of my surfaces end up being art. Has potential, yes. We're a little massaging on the that path curve. It could be a banana. All right, how are we doing? Okay, so you know, a lot of these you sit down and you go through the first couple of iterations and you try the things out. You take your best guess at it. You get to a point where you save it and you start another, take what you learned from that process, build it into the next one, and slowly that definition gets refined and you start to pull the geometry in. Or you fight it to a point to where you just, yeah, that's good enough. All right, move on. um, so the sweeps, the complex geometry, the sweeps, the loft, the boundaries, those are really not the same as starting out with your prismatic shapes and just saying, I know what I want. Well, I know what I want, but I don't know how to get there. Where the prismatic shapes, I know what I want and I know how to get there. Right, so we're going to have to develop that process as we go. All right, so this would be an interesting one to shell and see if we could run it through the Flow Express or the Flow, and see what happens with the currents inside of this thing. So we'll hold on to that one for future. All right, so the kind of the opposite on the loft. I think my tendency is almost you know, maybe that's where it springs from. My tendency is to generate the guide curve after you've generated your sections. All right, so we talked about taking the plane. If I do the control select and drag, I just need to determine how many loft sections I want. I don't know what the transitions are going to be, but let's go 2 inches, and I want 10 of them will put me back at 20 inches. But I don't want to draw that many, so 5 of them will put me at 10 inches. And we'll go ahead and show the top plane as the first one. And one of the nice things about when you generate those planes, if there is a little bit of variation, pretty much plane 1 was 2 inches, plane 2 is 4 inches. They're independently controlled. It's not stacked from one plane to the other. All right, if we needed that, then we would offset from this plane to the next one, offset to the plane, build them up. And at this case, if I decide I don't need a plane 3 at all, probably can't do it from here, but I could suppress it or delete it. All right, so one plane at a time. Let's go ahead and hide. And I always think in terms of the lofts of the HVAC. I'm going from a square duct to a round duct, and I need to control how that transition is made. Right? Lofting, the term comes from shipbuilding, where you had all of the ribs of the ship, and then the wood planks were laid across and bent to conform to those ribs. So pretty much that same thing. Boats or HVAC are your best kind of examples for dealing with those transitions. All right, so let's start with a circle. Previous examples, the ones in the detail, go from a triangle to a square to a hexagon to an octagon. We're just going to stay with circles and ellipses and come up with some interesting geometry. So we'll go with a 4-inch. That one closes. I'm done with it. Hide the top and show plane 1. All right, so where this starts to come in is I can tie geometry to this existing sketch and establish those parent, or I can keep it completely independent. Sketch 1 to sketch 2, sketch 3 can all be without any relations to the previous. All right. So didn't make it into the sketch. Plane 1. Alright, so at this point I've generated a revolve. Right, if I were to just draw a line and revolve it, I would have the pretty much the same result. So no advantage to going this route. So let's go 4 to 5. And we'll see what that transition looks like. Plane 3. Nope, did I skip one already? Yep. Alright, so if I draw plane 3 before, alright, so yeah, let's go ahead and we'll go back into the ellipse and start a transition. So let's go horizontal first. And whatever we're close to here, so 7. Alright, so I missed plane 2. So don't forget that you can go into sketch 3 here, edit the sketch plane, and instead of plane 3, I really wanted that to be on plane 2. So I pulled it off of plane 3, I'm putting it on plane 2, and then now I'm back in order. So now we can go into plane 3, open up the sketch, and this one I'm going to start to skew a little bit. Except my guide curve, I really would like my guide curve to just go through those points. No, it'll be a good try for a 3D sketch spline. Okay, and then sketch 4. Make another transition. And I pretty much on purpose left the other one underdefined. I want to be able to move it and look at it, go through that section. All right, and that was 4, so back on 5. Okay, so if I do nothing with the guide curve, and typically I would like the guide curve to keep it nice and simple, is through the front plane, it goes from intersecting point to intersecting point to intersecting point. Oops, I'm not quite at an intersecting point, at least on the node. I can probably get there, but if I want to be able to control, then I could go through the 3D and connect that point to that point to that point. And each of these ellipses has 4 points. Each of the circle has an infinite number or no nodes to consider. So if we really want to be able to manage this, I really should put 4 points on each of those circles, all right, to be able to match up to the 4 points on the ellipse. So let's just see what it generates, and we'll go through that process. So we're not going to have guide curves. We're just going to go to the handles. And as I drag the handle, I'm going to get more results. But the issue is that I don't really have a lot of control over those handles. I'm just kind of dragging to get a desired result. Right? I don't really know what it's going to produce because I haven't set anything. All right, so let's see. So let's see what the difference would be if I went back into sketch 1, and we're back to split entities, which was under the sketch tools, and split entities. And what that's going to do is allow me to, and I'm going to kind of pick these arbitrarily. And the last one was sketch 5. Oops, maybe not. Oh, there it is. All right, behind my record button again. Nope, didn't want to hide that. I wanted to edit it. All right, gonna do what I did earlier and shrink the screen and move it around. And show and edit. All right. I'm sure there's an easier way to do that, but I haven't looked yet. All right, so now they have kind of the same number of segments. Really, the ellipse is continuous, but those node points are going to come into the count. Nope, not going to go that way. All right, so direction, back to the point. And either I missed one or not sure. Got some heavy duty twist in there and it still managed to complete. All right, but the main thing is that I still am not completely satisfied with the direction with the guide curve. So even putting points, so if this one was to go to a square definitely has 4 points at each of the corners. Lining up the circle to that vertex and the square is going to be a lot easier splitting those out. All right, so from the let's try the front plane. Well, let's go to the right plane first, and we'll come back to it. So let's go with the standard spline. And even if I miss, I should be able to come back and pierce. All right, and again, pierce is going to where coincident would say it has this whole line, this whole ellipse to work from. Pierce says where the plane intersects that curve, there is only this solution and this solution. And I say that, and then I forgot what I was doing. All right, there we go. So now this is controlled, and when I go into to make the selection, oops, that was a control select. Go into the loft, pick up the guide curve, and then the guide curve takes over that control, and oh, we still have handles. When did that happen? That's probably a 2017 thing. Let's see, sketch tools, drag sketch for reordering, positioning. All right, to next guide curve, to next sharp, a little bit of transition. We only have the one guide curve, or we just leave it at global. And then the last one, or direction. All right, so again, we're getting something that looks, has that wavy. We're getting those organic shapes. We're getting the curvatures, but the level of control is just kind of depending on how much you want to build into it.
So the guide curves, when they're thrown in there, do the hands still?
That's a good question. Yeah, if the
some kind of precedent of the width of the loft. It looks kind of like we do.
and the wireframe, really not seeing it change much in the mesh. And it's kind of pulling the same thing, so not real sure why the handles are still showing up. Now this is Service Pack 0 of 2017. I just downloaded Service Pack 3 early visibility, so we'll get that installed and see if there's any differences. But for the most part, when they kind of set the direction like that, that's pretty much what you're going to get. So, which the handles, no, they're operating in the background. So, yeah, not a lot that you can. Okay, that opaque preview sounded good, but nope, didn't do anything. At least not in this thing. So. When you start down the path of the sweeps, the lofts, the boundaries, have in mind what you want to end up with, but be prepared to treat it more as fun, because it is going to be frustrating. It is going to give you errors. It is going to have those, wow, that was an interesting result. Too bad I don't need that because I couldn't generate that if I wanted to, kind of thing. So. Go into it with the mindset that you are exploring and you're developing those strategies.